All right, everybody. Welcome to KC Happy Hour, episode number 33. We thank you guys, as always, for tuning in for all of these live episodes. We've got a action-packed show tonight, to say the least. First of all, let's go ahead and we'll introduce our general guest that we've got joining us on the show. First time on the show for Jake French and Marijn Kremers. Well, not first time for Jake, first time for Marijn. Thanks for joining, boys.
Thank you.
All right, we got regular KC member Braden Eves here. Join us in the broadcast booth. What's up, Braden?
What's going on, Xander?
Ryan Norberg joins us from his HD 4K studio over in Orlando. What's up, Ryan?
How you doing?
Paulie Massimino should be in here somewhere, somehow. Don't know where he is. In his place for the first part of the show, who's going to be joining us for a special segment later on, is Race Liberante. Race, how's the stash feeling tonight?
It's doing good. Just trimmed her up for this.
All right, so let's go through a couple bit of news here before we get deep into the week. Obviously, as always, we want to run through our winners on the bottom of the screen. Huge shout out and congratulations to the winners from the USPKS event down in Orlando. There was the Cup Karts North America race over in Charlotte Motor Speedway. I think they just barely might have eclipsed the 300 number for their event, which was cool to see. The CKNA guys have been pushing on it, and to have, again, we talked about it on our KC broadcast throughout the weekend, was massive that they were able to have 300 entries of their own. Obviously, there's a lot of crossover in the junior, the mini, and the micro ranks. Not as much in senior, but a handful of guys, the likes of Colin Warren, who we'll get to see sometimes under the Chad Dawkin banner in X30 Pro competition over in Charlotte with TS Racing and 206 stuff. We'll have a little more on that. We don't have enough time in the show to give a full in-depth breakdown of how that weekend went. I know there were a few red flags and a few things we'll touch on with racecraft, but a lot of it was a lot of the same that had the same growing pains that the US Pro Kart Series did down in Orlando. And really, it was just a matter of having so many drivers on the racetrack. The officials can only do so much. There's a lot to touch on infrastructure, starts, racing in general. That's what we're going to touch on a little bit tonight. So I think a lot of that will kind of correlate to the CKNA guys. Again, it's very easy to officiate a race with 10 or 20 or even 25 go-karts. It's a lot tougher to officiate a race when you've got 30, 40, and especially in back-to-back classes of 40 to 50. So that was a big thing that they struggled with up there, and I don't want to say struggle in a bad way. It's just a matter of each series. Both of them have incidents that inevitably won't get caught. They don't have a video system at CKNA. They didn't have one at USPKS. The best you have is GoPro view at PKS. And the CKNA guys, they've been making improvements. We've had Greg Casperson on the show that have talked about it in depth. The big news that came out over the last week, though, that we're going to have a lot of these guys talk about is, of course, the massive change in the weights for the SuperKarts USA Pro Tour and SuperKarts USA Winter Series. And I'll bring those up on the screen here really quickly so you guys can see and put them fully on. So obviously, the major changes here, and I'll take this banner off the bottom so everyone can see the changes. X30 Master, I believe it was dropped 10 pounds. If it wasn't only at 395, but sometimes it does run at 385, to be fair. So it wasn't a massive change for them. The X30 Senior class was dropped 10 pounds. The X30 Junior class was dropped 5 pounds. The KA100 Senior class was dropped 15 pounds. And the KA Junior class dropped 10 pounds. Now, as we go into the show and kind of dive a little bit deeper into what that means, the way that SKUSA did this, and they had a whole press release that kind of broke it down, is they said that they went through and they took a look and a tally and made a statistic and a full, really scientific level analysis on how much lead was on each driver's go-kart that came to the scales at a Winter Series, at a Pro Tour, and then at the SuperNats. And then they said if you had, everybody had on average 10, 15, 20 pounds on the go-kart, they were going to take that 20 pounds off and run everybody lower. And there's a lot of arguments to get into. There's a lot of stuff from the weekend. First of all, I want to give everybody a chance to talk about their weekend a little bit, and then we're going to dive into these weights to give the drivers thoughts because, to be honest, I don't want to say that this announcement came out of nowhere because everywhere that we go for the last few years, I've heard it. I know these guys have heard it too. Guys will talk, oh, man, we have too much lead on these go-karts. If you look over at the European weights for the single-speed classes, which to a degree, and I'll touch on it a little bit more later, is targeted more to younger drivers. They typically push guys out of karts and either into the shifter classes or into car racing at the age of 15 or 16. So they can run a senior class at 345 or 350 for a 125, and they can run the junior classes even lighter and the mini classes even lighter. And they obviously, over there, Europe is where the majority of karts in America, of karts that we race in America, are manufactured. So those karts are designed to run on those tracks with those tires at those weights. So when we came over here, the argument for years and years and years was that we were running heavier, so the karts weren't handling as good. And for most manufacturers, it was tough. They'd either develop an American model, or for a few, for example, Tony Kart, that always has been the gold standard on the two-stroke racing especially, seemed to have a good product that worked on both ends of the spectrum, that ran good on a sticky tire with 10 less horsepower and 20 more pounds. So now SKUSA made the change. There's a lot of pushback on both sides of it. And as always, there's kind of a vocal minority and a silent majority that pushes for these changes. But this change didn't fully come out of nowhere. So I want to preface that before we say anything else, because there's a lot of guys that have been saying, look, we have too much lead on these go-karts. There's a safety issue with this, etc. I'll give my take on it later. I want to hear these guys' takes, and I want to give you guys these takes as well. And like I said, I want to give everybody a chance to talk about their weekend. Paulie Massimino also joins us here. What's up, Paulie? You're a little bit late to the show, but you're here.
Yes, sir. Just made it.
So anyway, yeah, just in. And Paulie, I promised you talking time. You're going to get some tonight. Don't worry. Here, look, I'll put you center of the screen. You're smiling. I won't interrupt you. I swear on my life, I will let you chat. But let's go through the weekends here first. Jake and Marijn, you guys are together, top of the screen. Let's have you guys break down your weekends. Marijn, you first, because Jake, we got to see a little bit of yours. Yours was a little more sad than Marján's. Marijn?
Yeah, my weekend wasn't too bad. It started off as a bit of a struggle. Never been to Orlando track before, and just getting to grips with the track and the go-kart I had under me. But we seemed to figure it out in the Saturday final, which unfortunately had a brake failure there, so I couldn't really shoot it. Sunday was really good, so we got up to speed. A little bit late, but not too bad.
And then Jake, what about you?
I didn't get very much. The one time I raced, it was okay. I kind of was out on my own. I didn't really race anybody just because anytime I tried to race anybody, they ran over me or spun me out. So it wasn't that great. The kart was great. I mean, we had still good speed. We qualified top 5 in one of the days, and finished 3rd in the pre-final. But other than that, I didn't get the race.
All right, let's bring on Race. I'm gonna hold on you here for later. Once Brandon Lemke joins us a little bit later in the show for your debrief on the weekend, because I want to hear both of your guys later on. So we're gonna wait on that. Braden, you were watching this weekend. You've been on the sidelines. You were in the commentary booth with me a little bit. Overall, I mean, you've run at Orlando Kart Center before. What was your thoughts on being a spectator this weekend, and obviously a coach and tuner as well for Adrian Cruz?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. Obviously, I was just in St. Pete the weekend before, so really nice logistically to come over. But I thought it was a fantastic event. USPKS always does a good job. Really good to see the numbers and how healthy karting is and how healthy it's becoming. So really positive things on that. But no, I think the event went smooth. I thought everything was good. Racing was, some of the classes were good racing, but maybe a little bit on the dirty side. I saw some people that were just getting shunted off, but overall, I thought it was a good weekend, and all good.
Paulie, what about you? You got rolling real good Saturday, speed seemed decent Sunday, and just kind of couldn't really get any luck, right?
Yeah, we kind of struggled earlier on in the weekend, and I wasn't really expecting that. But we slowly started to make our speed up. By the time we got to Saturday, we started to figure some stuff out, the setup and the motor, the gearing, and all this. But it just kind of took a little bit too long, which screwed us on Friday with our qualifying position. And then Saturday and Sunday, we had some pretty good speed, but just didn't really have the luck. And I just want to say thank you to everyone at RPM for never giving up. And you guys showed me that you guys are willing to do whatever it takes to win. So I appreciate that from Copeland, Perry, Formel was a big help, Jagger, everyone into that tent. Thank you.
And then Ryan, not much to say besides you had a pretty clear weekend. Couple starts, you got shuffled back, but pace was good.
Yeah, pace was good all week. Obviously, we were there the week before testing, so that always helps. And I live here, so it's never a bad thing to be at your home track. So yeah, it was a good week for us, good week for the team. Paul, got a pole as well, and he was up front and fast. And so, yeah, I was really proud of everybody and all the work that we put in to get everybody pretty quick. And yeah, hoping for the next couple of rounds. I think USPKS did a really good job with the series and how many drivers they had. Originally, like we talked on the show, I was kind of nervous going into the weekend, like just not sure how it was all going to work. But I think, Andre did a good job with the track and the series did a good job, separating everybody and making sure there was never too many karts on track, at least the next 30.
Let's go ahead and we'll move on from that here. Obviously, Ryan swept in X30. Marijn was up front. Everyone on the show had some good pace, which is a classic standard from a weekend. You'll see that in everybody's Facebook post. Pace to win, didn't get the results we deserve, etc. But let's move on from that. We'll come back to USPKS Orlando and some of the on-track action in a little bit. That'll be a lot later in our show, especially when we get Lemke into the studio as well. Let's go over the weights, guys. So again, going over through them, we'll put ourselves at the bottom. We'll get the ticker off the screen. Actually, let me put it over here so everyone can see. Again, the shifter stuff not affected. The micro and mini. I think the mini in some other race series has been at 245. I haven't been paying close attention. I'll be honest myself. I didn't know if it was a 235 change, but it looks like obviously the bolden changes or the bold text are the ones that did get changed at least most recently. So if they did drop mini, it was an early announcement to 235. I don't know if that's a major change for any of the mini drivers. Most of the time, the drivers are moving up at 11 years old anyway, or 10 going on 11. So you don't necessarily see a lot of pushback if the mini class drops a little bit in weight and gets closer down to micro. But the KA senior class was a big discussion. The X30 junior, KA junior, a little bit lesser. And the X30, just the senior classes in general were a big topic of discussion. So I want to pass it around the room before I get to my thoughts on the subject. Jake, you ran KA this week, so let's go back up to you here. 345 pounds, and it trickles down. TSRS has adopted the rules. They're an IKF sanctioned series, which means they fall under the SCUSA umbrella. Thoughts?
I mean, it can go both ways. The regional stuff, with it that low, is going to be a big problem because at the regional stuff, we have a lot of bigger guys, older guys that run KA for fun. There's not really KA masters, so they all run KA senior, so they're going to be way overweight. Nationally, I mean, the class, to get into the class is pretty early age, 14, and most of those kids are 100 pounds, 120 pounds at most. And, I can get them when over half the field is that young, they're that light. Yeah, you're going to get the reading that a lot of kids have a lot of weight on the cart. But there's some other guys, I commented that he won't be able to run a KA anymore. I'll be overweight if I do run it again. That sometimes we like to hop in and have some fun and run something different. So we don't have to have the world's, greatest motor for X30 or something. So it's something to do for fun. But now, honestly, I think the weight's too light for us.
Marijn, obviously you've spent the last few years running over in Europe. You know what the dynamic is over there. I mean, you've got just pretty much almost all kids in every single speed class at the international racing. I don't know exactly the scene as well as maybe you would on the national scene for a number of the countries that are more popular, like Italy, France, and Spain. But for a guy that's been around America for a little bit, I mean, 345, I don't know what you're at right now, but you'd probably be tight on the weight for a K senior class at 22, 23, 24 years old.
Yeah, so I think the average weight of a normal driver, like a adult driver, would be like around the 160 pounds area. So I feel like if you're weighing 160, it's like you're not overweight or anything, but you still won't be able to make weight over in Europe in the senior classes. And I believe that's the case now as well. If you want to run K senior, being as a driver weighing 160, I think you'll be right on the limit. So which I think is a bit much.
Braden, you and I were debating right before we went on the air. You said these weights are good. So let's go ahead. You love to play devil's advocate. What are your thoughts here as a 5'8" guy who can weigh 145?
Okay, 5'9". Thank you very much. But yeah, I mean, like when I was obviously full-time in karting before I moved over to cars, I always had a lot of weight on my cart. And when I moved into senior, like Jake said, I was like 120 pounds. So obviously, like for the people that are just moving up, I mean, everyone wants the weights to be less. I mean, the carts handle better. The engines they feel quicker. Like 10 pounds can make a massive difference in the bottom end of the engine. And obviously, like I am never going to be one to complain when you're going to be making the class faster. But I also see the other side of it, right? There's a lot of people that are in that I guess it would be like 175 range where they're struggling to make weight. I know that I'm 145 with kit. And I always had like 30, even now, like 30 pounds on my cart. So I don't know. I mean, I welcome it just because I know that I'll never struggle for it. But I mean, it's just also kind of the chassis have definitely gotten heavier. The bodywork is much, much heavier than it used to be. Like if we were still using bodywork from like 4 or 5 years ago, before the hot dog noses and all that, the OTK stuff. The bodywork was probably another 5 pounds lighter back then. So obviously, that definitely weighs into it. I think some people are going to have to start running some of the older style bodywork if they're already struggling to make weight, which is a bit tough. But no, I mean, for me, it's like I'm never going to complain about going faster.
All right. Jake, here's a good question actually that just came in. This was from Brian McCaddy. He wanted to know, what's your weight right now as a guy who runs shifter and a guy over 6 foot?
So KA, I had 8 pounds in my cart, 9 pounds in my cart at 360, I think it is. And it's about the same, or no, about 5 pounds for the shifter. So for me, I mean, I'm 165-ish, right around there. And I still had about 8 pounds on my cart for KA.
If they drop it,
Let's-
maybe 7 over.
I think that's also the scales at the race
think-
were weighing pretty light as well. So I think they were like 10 pounds under. So
Really?
they were like I had about 10 pounds more than I normally do
But
on
they
my
got
cart
better.
all week.
They got better Saturday, Sunday. Like Friday, they were way light. They were 8-9 pounds
Yeah.
light.
Well, Race, again, another older guy, bigger guy, taller guy, I should say bigger. I don't want to poke at you for having too many beers at the end of the day, but let's bring you in. What's your thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, I mean, talking for all the skinny fat guys in the world, it's not good for me. I weigh 172 right now, and I at the lightest when I was running shifter full time was about 162 to 165. So, I kind of like I made weight in Vegas at, I think it was 355 at Rock or 350, and I was barely making weight with just enough gas to finish the race at that. But K is kind of a difficult class to judge that for. Maybe at the national level, it's doable because there are a lot of younger, very light drivers that are entering K now. But on the regional side, for sure, I think the weight still needs to be around 355 to 360, just because you do have, you're also getting turnover from guys that are moving up from 206 that may just be hobbyists that don't, they're not little skinny rail kids. They're more built like me or something like that. So, yeah, maybe for the national stuff, it should work out fine, especially if they, I know they did their calculations based on what everybody weighed and how much load was on the car. So, hopefully it works out for them, but I won't be attending.
And Paulie, I'll give you the chance to talk here. Like I said, promise at the beginning of the show, you're going to get some airtime. So what are your thoughts on the weights?
Honestly, I think it might be a little bit too light, but I don't think I really have to worry about it right now. But if I keep going down the same path, maybe. But it kind of, I guess it's all right for the younger kids because most of the kids moving up from junior are little twigs. But kind of like people like Race and people that are taller, not so much big, just taller. They can't. I mean, if they get down to make the weight, they'll be anorexic. So, I think it's a little bit too light, but I guess they'll do a trial and error, kind of like the push downs or the drop downs.
Let's bring Brandon Lemke in here. He's signed on. Brandon, you got us?
I gotcha.
All right, Brandon, what are your thoughts on the weight changes for Scusa? I don't know if you're going to end up running it this year, but it drops at 15 pounds in KA Senior.
Yeah, I was looking at that before. I mean, obviously, I don't have a problem with it. One, I'm not running it, and two, I'm super light. I like 125 now, and that's gone up in the past few months. So, but I mean, even if I was running it, it wouldn't be an issue for me. I think like everybody else is saying, I think that's cutting it close. But I don't know. I think 3.6. I mean, it's working now. It seems to be okay. Especially now for the bigger guys, they can run it, and everybody seems to be okay with it. So I don't know. Maybe they're trying it. Maybe they'll go back to it, the higher weight. But I don't know. I think it'd be okay to try it just for at least one race or a couple races. But I bet they'll probably go back to it.
So my thoughts on it are this, and I was a very similar build to Brandon when I was younger. I'm 6 foot now, but when I got out of junior, I think I don't know, Braden, you remember from the first races I ran with you when we were pitting together down at Daytona, I was probably maybe just over 100 pounds at 15, 14. And I was always really skinny. I walk around now probably about a 155, 160, and I would say I'm still on the leaner side. But that's after putting on probably about 10 pounds of going to the gym consistently for a year and a half from 150. And again, like right at 6 foot, Jake's taller than I am. There's taller guys than me, and there's a lot bigger guys than I am. I would say I'm not an average guy. So if you look at the weight, Jake, if you're right, at the way that the scales were, where you were running with 5 to 9 pounds, you're walking at 165. That puts the average driver weight at 175 to run that. And the way that the USPKS weights are, and the way that the SKUSA weights are prior to this, they were 360 and 65, which was pretty much identical. And I mentioned this before the show to a lot of our guys. In 2017, I ran the initial USPKS KA season when the engine was introduced. I went over and I ran X30 at the SKUSA Summer Nats. From 360 to 365, I had the same amount of lead on the go-kart, which I think was about 25 pounds. As a skinnier guy, I've never had like more than 40 to 50 pounds on my seat. I think at the most, maybe I've had 45 when I was just getting up and into senior. And obviously that went down a little bit when I went from a 360-pound Yamaha senior class to the 365X30 class. I don't know if it's necessarily like Braden said, the karts do go a little bit quicker. You get 10 pounds of an advantage. But, if you look and let's say maybe 40 to 50 pounds is the threshold down from 175. I mean, that puts it down to, a guy like Brandon at 125. Brandon, do you know how much lead you ran on the go-kart this weekend by chance?
We had to take some off, but we usually around 30 to 40 pounds. So it's probably around the 35 pound mark.
So maybe even more, maybe even I had less than I'm estimating, or I was lighter than what I'm estimating now. But point being, having that lead around the go-kart, obviously if you're a taller guy, that helps you in the rain. So, running with less lead, you can't play with it in the dry on terms of like the pros and cons of it. But I don't see the problem if most of the field is 10 pounds to play. I mean, when you go to car racing, to a degree, depending on which car you're racing, you're playing with lead a little bit. You want the driver to be lighter, just not to make the car lighter, but so you have more lead to move and balance the car. In the MX-5 Cup cars, some of the sports cars, drivers on the left side, they want the driver to be light to put more lead on the right-hand side. And the open wheel stuff, it's a little bit different. They want the drivers to be a little bit smaller. But in this case, I get it. Yes, if everybody has 10 pounds of lead on the go-kart, you can cut it off. But I think that the oversight that was said in the comment section was like, that's an average. The average was that 10 or 15 pounds was on each go-kart, not necessarily that the heaviest guy, the tallest guy had 10 pounds on. So when you cut it down and all of a sudden that tall guy is 10, 15 pounds over, and like Braden said, 10 pounds makes a massive difference, then that guy's probably not going to show back up to the next weekend. And then what are we catering to? I had a really good conversation with Austin Miles at the end of the weekend, who's the driver coach for Carson and Cole Morgan and Data Guy. And for both of those drivers, they moved up to senior at 14 going on 15. I think they just turned 15 right as they were getting into senior. Cole moved up in 2020. Carson obviously has moved up in 2022. Both of them were about 90 pounds when they moved up. And Austin said, look, if you want to go up to senior, you want to start, working your way up the ladder, getting closer and closer to being a top-tier driver, whether that's top-tier driver in karting or trying to do stuff over in car racing. You need to train like a professional athlete, treat yourself like a pro driver. So he's like, look, you got to go to the gym. You got to eat better. You got to drink some protein shakes. You got to put on some weight. You got to get from 90 pounds to 120 pounds, which seems to be about that threshold, at least 110, not to 120. And in a few months, growing kids at 14, 15 years old, went to the gym, worked out, got bigger, got to 123, got to 125. And all of a sudden, they didn't have a whole refrigerator bolted onto the go-kart. Instead, and again, and Marijn, you can chip in a little bit to this too, with the European guys where the model there is, again, you go to karts. At 14 or 15, you either get out of karts, you go to F4, you become a hobbyist, or you go to shifter. In the U.S., it's very different. We've got adults running in KA Senior and X30 Senior that make up a majority of the majority of the entries. It's not a just flagship IndyCar racing like the European International model is, which to me is kind of a flawed model in general. And there's a whole lot more to that. But I don't see the issue with the guys running 10 or 15 pounds at minimum of lead on the go-kart. You can move it around. You got the engine on the right in the KA class, so you put lead on the left-hand side to balance it out. I don't fully understand why it's such a big deal to cut 10 pounds of lead off, because the three arguments that we've heard over the years, and again, all you guys can chip in too, because you've heard the same arguments, is it's like, oh, all right, we need to make the karts lighter so they're safer when they flip and they flip onto your head. Okay. 10 pounds, 15 pounds, is that going to make a difference? We got a 150-pound go-kart flipping onto our head when we go over, or we have a 135-pound, or you have a 150-pound instead of 170-pound. Is that a major difference in saving a life? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Can't say I know the difference there. The other difference, like I said, that we've talked about in the past, Karts do go a little bit faster. The karts are designed for the lighter weight. And again, you could say the average of the drivers has that lead weight, but how much are you cutting off? And then in Jake's case, which was the big point, you've got a lot of young guys running KA Senior nationally, but stuff trickles down. And that's the model that we have in the sport right now, like it or not. SKUSA and USPKS and Rock, they dictate what the clubs and the regionals that run their motors go back on down. So, right now for the Texas State Series, for a number of other series that'll follow those rules, they're going to cut those weights down. And like Jake said, I mean, the master class at TSRS was what, 6-8 entries compared to a 40 entry senior class last year?
Oh.
About the same, Jake, I think.
But, sorry, you broke up a little bit. I didn't hear the very last bit.
6 or 8 entries in KA Masters versus like a 40 entry KA senior class at TSRS last year.
Yeah, I was about that. Yep.
Yeah. So, for the reason I bring that up is a lot of the X30 Master, KA Master guys nationally will go home and run senior at the regional and local level because the competition isn't as stiff and they can go compete for wins there versus the national stuff. I don't know. From my perspective as a young guy, as a lighter guy, even younger, I never really saw a massive issue. We just spot, the difference is the lighter guys, they buy electric stands. The heavy guys, they're just not going to show up. Like race, I mean, this completely takes you out of running KA at any of those races now, right?
Yeah, unless I, start going to the gym again, taking it more seriously. But I think I put 6 pounds on and had a full tank of fuel for the main. So, I mean, I maybe have a total of 10 to flirt with. So like I said, I made 350 at Rock, and I thought like, okay, that's a pretty solid number. I can understand 350. I can't even remember what we used to run HPV at back in the day, but if I have to get a lipo battery, or I wish I could just not run a harness and just have a remote starter, that would all kind of help. If that, if they start allowing that, then I could probably still make weight, but other than that, probably not.
Okay, sorry. I had a question come in from Derek Mays if there's a spider on the wall behind me. I don't think so.
There's something small up in the corner. Uh-huh.
Well, there's a sprinkler up there. I don't know what that dot is, but I think that's just a dot on my camera, actually. I don't think there's just a sprinkler. I don't have a spider. Anyway, I got off task. But the point being, I don't know. My personal thoughts on it is it was like the question that is it's a classic thing and the same issue like Brandon kind of alluded to with the pushback bumpers, or maybe SKUSA tries this, maybe they do it, maybe they go through with it and then they pull back because there's enough guys that are calling the SKUSA offices saying, hey, we got too much lead on the go-kart. Hey, my go-kart's getting hurt because we're stressing it out. We got 55 pounds on the chassis. Everyone's running with lead on, etc. But these series, I mean, you've got 300 entries, 326 entries at the USPKS event at Orlando, and not everybody runs the full season. So for them to have an average of 300 entries at every race means they probably got 500 to 600 drivers that just run those series alone. So when you look at that number and you think, all right, there's 600 clients that we've got. If you just look at the national and then you've got 10 or 20 guys complaining about lead, that's still a very small percentage of the entire series. And there were probably a relatively small amount that were complaining about pushbacks. Granted, a couple of those were on this show, including Ryan, whose internet's conked out, but he said that he didn't like him. Braden, I know you've talked about him. Paulie, you've talked about him on the show. They took him out. And then Paulie, you were the first one. You had to eat your words a little bit and say you liked him when they came back. Right, Paulie?
Yes, sir, I did. But I do like what USPKS did last weekend with the protests. I think it definitely saved a lot of people, especially when, I don't know, maybe for a podium or even whatever, for wherever you finish. Because I know I got one when I couldn't really do anything. And when you save yourself 6 seconds, it really does help.
Brian McCaddy's comment here makes a whole lot of sense too. Serious question. Who do you want to attract to these races and these classes? Do you want the kids who are in senior level karting for a year or two that move to cars? Or do you want the older drivers who will be in karting for more than a year or two before leaving? And I mean, the point being, Jake, Race, you guys are lifers in this sport. You've been around it for a long time. If this cuts you out of the class and we're constantly having to farm a new class, what are we catering to? So that to me is the bigger question, which like I said, I think that's where Europe has it wrong, that they're catering so heavy to the drivers and making it solely an academy into cars when it can be an independent discipline just as much as it could be a ladder in, because obviously you can't start car racing at 5 years old like you can in go-karts. But what do you want to cater to? And I think it's possible for guys to gain weight to a degree. Everyone's bodies are a little bit different. I don't know if I fully get this one, even as a guy who would honestly benefit, because now I'm going to have either, if I were to run, 0 lead on the go-kart or just a little bit of lead. So I don't know. If you guys have any more thoughts on it, feel free to chime in. But that's kind of my little bit on the soapbox that I wanted to say about it. And I don't know if I have much more to add besides I don't know if that was really enough calls to warrant the change. But then again, there may not have been a whole lot of calls that warranted the pushback push. And this might be something that shuts the people up if the numbers all instantly drop because of the lighter weights. So we'll see. Any closing thoughts, anyone? All good? Most of this group, anyway, I think said everything. So we'll be good. Let's move on, though. We'll take a quick commercial break. Obviously, there's a lot of you guys that tuned in for one specific thing, and that's to talk about racecraft. And we've got 2 guys in here this weekend that were on track and, kind of got near each other. So Brandon and Race, we're going to have them give their thoughts on the weekend. When we come back from commercial, I want to hear Braden's thoughts as a part-time driver in the booth this weekend, not on the racetrack. Paulie was on the racetrack. Marijn was on the racetrack as well as Jake. So we'll give a few thoughts on that. And as a guy who's kind of been on the officiating side and seen the back end of the US Pro Kart Series for 2 years, seen the back end of a lot of different series for being the announcer for each of these events and seeing how they work and the infrastructure, I've got some thoughts on it all too. There's a lot to talk about. So we're going to come back with that after the commercial break. Stick with us.
KC Happy Hour is presented by Precision Performance Karting. PPK is the exclusive South Florida dealer for Coyote Motorsports kart racing chassis and Coyote's newest distributor. However, owner John Seglem and Coyote Motorsports' relationship spans across numerous decades in the sport, meaning that you've got years of winning expertise at your service. PPK offers trackside support at all of the CKNA South Division events, the CKNA Majors, such as the SpringNationals and the Grand Nationals, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, and a number of club races in the Southeast. PPK also has an impressive driver roster at these events, racking up multiple wins and podiums in 2021 with longtime Coyote Motorsports driver Chris Carroll and KC Happy Hour's own Paulie Massimino and Brandon Jarsacrack. If you're looking to get on the same race-winning equipment as these drivers, from the Coyote Motorsports chassis to the Odenthal motor mounts and Greyhound racing seats, Precision Performance Karting has you covered. Check out Precision Performance Karting on Facebook and Instagram or email them at ppkartingfl@gmail.com.
There's a new engine program on the block that's already begun winning races. Speed Lab Racing Engines has already racked up wins in X30 classes at the US Pro Kart Series and Rock GP classes at the most recent Rock Vegas event. Headed up by names you can trust, such as longtime engine builder Mario Lafredo and industry veteran Mike Speed, Speed Lab Racing Engines has quickly become the engine of choice for a number of top teams in the sport, most recently servicing the entire Rullison Performance Group and Speed Concepts Racing operations at Rock Vegas, and also servicing the likes of JC Karting and Mike Doty Racing. It won't be long before this engine program gets a wait list, with his resume already filling up with wins, so make sure to reach out and get your tune-up by emailing them at speedlabracinengines@gmail.com.
All right, so before we get into it, we'll put the guys on the screen for their reactions. I want to at least get into Jake's bit first because I know there's some other stuff we'll get in. Well, actually, you know what? Let's go to the other clip first. Let's go to Race and Brandon. So we're going to put you guys on camera. We're going to play the clip of both incidents here that at least were on Sunday. There was more racing. Jake's obviously big crash that we caught on the stream was back on Saturday. But let's play what we've got to get into here for Sunday.
Levy, then Josh.
Oh, a little bit too far. Here we go.
Other pack led behind by Finnegan Bailiff, who's in the 6th position. Bailiff with a little gap. Then at Aiden Levy, then Josh Oates as Lemke. Little love tap to Liberante, and he closes him off there out of the final corner. I think that gentleman racing's out the window here. New leader Alex Stanfield takes over the top spot in turn number 5 here, and they're going to battle quite a bit here to start this main event. Stanfield brings hand with him. Lemke
contact with
Liberante. Whoa, right there. Brandon Lemke, race Liberante. I got a feeling that had some sauce behind it right there. Other pack led behind by Finnegan.
All right,
Bailiff,
boys.
who's in the 6th position.
So, Brandon, your take on the weekend here first, and those 2 incidents right there. The pre-final, you get into the back of race. Final, race gets into you early on. First thing, you guys come near each other. Brandon, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, overall, I think the weekend was good. I mean, we had the speed. Definitely had the chance to win both days. You know, qualified 4th for Saturday, pole on Sunday, won both heat races, won the final on Saturday, and 4th on Sunday. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to Sunday in the pre-final with race, I mean, I looked back at the video, and this is before, or this is after race and I talked, so I didn't really get a good chance to look at the video. But I looked back at my GoPro, and I was like, oh geez, yeah, I did get into him pretty dang hard, like harder than I initially thought. So first and foremost, I want to apologize for that because I didn't realize it was that hard. And now that I see it, it's like, okay, I can see why you'd be a little upset about that. And then when it comes to the final, I was, I wasn't thinking too much of him. Like, okay, I'm in a good spot. The race just started. See how the rest of the race goes. I just got passed by 2 carts. I'm sitting in third. This is fine. They're blocking, doing the whole racing thing, whatever. And next thing I know, I'm in the wall, and my arm's getting ran over. I couldn't feel it, and then later on the lap, the battery falls off, and having to drive with one hand on a bent steering wheel, probably a bent chassis. But other than that, I mean, it was good up until that point, and even at that point, it wasn't that bad. So I mean, if that's the worst part of the weekend, it's not horrible to me. I just went into it wanting to win mainly, and then got into it with somebody, unfortunately. And I mean, I gotta respect, the retaliation. But I mean, I know where he stands. I think he knows where I stand. I'm not upset with it. I think we're probably back to square one. Like I said, we talked it out. He knows where I stand. I know where he stands, and I think probably like a clean slate going to the next race. I don't know how he feels, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Race, what's your take on both deals?
Yeah, just to start off, I was having a pretty rough weekend to start and found some pace and felt like I had contention for the win too. Come race day, coming from the back. So Saturday, nothing really crazy happened. I kind of wanted to go into the weekend and just kind of play it cool in the races. I wasn't, I'm really there to develop my product and see if some of our new stuff's working. And if I get a chance to race for a win, then I'm going to do it. But so I was kind of planned on Saturday, just hanging out, running in the top 5. I took the lead kind of early on and was just cruising, not blocking, not playing defense or anything crazy. And then I just kind of started getting taken advantage of. And I think it was Brandon went for a pass on me, and Terlecki went with him and kind of got me off line and into the dirt a little out of turn 10. And then it happened again with another driver out of turn 9 or into turn 9. So that point, like, I just kind of got shoved around a little bit. I'm like, okay, well, I was trying to just ride it out, play it cool, and see how the race was going to unfold. And at that point, then that track too, if you went off or dipped a wheel, it took about 4 or 5 corners to really clean your tires up. You saw Fletcher really get taken back on Saturday, and then he had to rally back forward a couple laps later. So it was really hard to clean your tires off. So I started going defense every time I was hopping the curbs super hard. And, anytime I get dirt on the tires, I kind of played defense for 4 or 5 corners just to make sure I could open back up and do my line. It wasn't necessarily like to hold a position, more so than just maintain. So yeah, I just kind of got beat up a lot. And Sunday, I had the speed to win Saturday, and Sunday I felt like, I'm going to go into this a little more elbows out, and led that pre-final, and was actually, at one point kind of pulling those guys as they started racing for second. And yeah, when he just kind of got into me a little harder than I would have liked, I'm okay with, if I'm playing defense and somebody gives me a little nudge and just rolls me up line and takes that spot and, hands me a little bit of room to exit just to funnel back in line, all cool for that kind of style racing. But when you almost feel like you get pounded a little bit for no apparent reason, when you didn't feel like you did something wrong to start that's kind of when I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be the guy that just lets it go and then goes and talks shit on Discord or something like that. I'm going to handle my business and make sure that we're on the same playing field, and that we make sure that, we should be racing each other like we want to be raced at all times. So I never intentionally do anything malicious like that or get into anybody that hard. And then worst case scenario, don't at least apologize for it after I do it, if it was unintentional. So yeah, we got into it in the scale line at after the pre-final, and I came at him pretty hot, and that didn't help the situation by any means, but I didn't feel like we were on the same page going into the main, and I definitely made that known. But we talked it out afterwards, which is the most important thing. I think more than just accountability for our actions on the racetrack, being able to resolve those through communication is where I think our experience and maturity and time in this sport allowed us to have a conversation and come to a mutual point where we know how we need to race each other.
Right. And, for both of you guys, I mean, again, I think that was the biggest takeaway for me when I called you both yesterday to have you guys come on is, this isn't the first time, obviously, for the viewers. This is the first time hearing from both you guys your full stories and having caught up on everything. But you guys went out of your way to kind of talk to each other again Sunday night. You watched the video. You kind of debrief. Now there's been a couple days. Brandon's arm's a little bit more hopefully healed or closer to healed. Brandon, I'm sure it's a little bit swollen or sore at least. But that's to me on the screen right now is you've kind of got Brandon on the older age of what I would say maybe a younger generation, and Race on the younger age of an older generation, and that's what that KA Senior class typically sees a whole lot more of. And I want to bring the rest of the guys back in here. We also have Jeremy Fletcher joining the show as well, who's going to be happy to talk a little more. Jeremy, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear, bud. So, I think, and Race, you and I talked at length about this yesterday, that, I think, and not to toot our own horn in any way with happy hour, but, for Braden and Paulie, you guys have never been teammates up until this show. I mean, you guys seen each other at the racetrack, maybe hung out, but now you guys are talking to each other every single week. And I think the dialogue that we've just kind of unintentionally opened on the X30 class has made that class seem to have a little more respect, especially at least of the front runners that we're heavily covering. And where you really, had a difference was in Brandon's case. Obviously, you got it. You didn't think you got into him as bad as you did, right? But the retaliation factor we don't really see too much in the younger generation, right? Guys are kind of doing stuff back and forth. I mean, Jeremy, you've had your bits where you kind of got into it a little bit with Cole, obviously, and Homestead. But in general, there's just differences in how people want to race. And where a lot of the incidents came down to, and maybe less so even between you guys, but some of the other racing in KA Senior, in the case of Jake's wreck, is you've got a lot of differences in opinion of how the race should go, what the etiquette should be like, what the driver should be adhering to. When do you back out when the guy's passing you? When, as a passing driver, are you allowed to close the guy off? Where does the line kind of lie? Do you want to be okay with bump and runs like Race said? If you defend, if you get kind of moved out of the way, are you going to be pissed? In Race's case, and in Jake, you've been racing a long time too. If you're blocking and you kind of get nudged and moved up a lane, I mean, that's kind of understood. Like, all right, that's the risk you take. That's why you break a little bit longer when you do defend. In the newer generation, blocking seems to be a lot more prevalent and a lot less accepted if you get moved out of the way when you do block. In fact, there were penalties called both at Scusa. Finnegan Bailiff lost a win because he kind of got into Carson Morgan a little bit and moved him up the racetrack when he was defending in the back hairpin in that crazy crash with Aiden Rudolph. And then at the same time this weekend, Alex Stanfield nearly lost a win because he kind of didn't even really get into. He was on the inside of him. Bailiff crowded him down, and he kept the nose in there, and contact was made, and he got by. But having a dialogue, I think, between all of the drivers, and I think it'd be good for all you guys to chip in, of whether or not you talk to guys more at the racetrack now because of the stuff we're doing or because of stuff in general. And if you feel, because I think if you feel guys are talking more or less, Race and Jake, you guys, and Braden too, and Brandon, you guys have been around when national racing was a lot less teams, a lot more privateers, and everyone seemed naturally kind of talking to each other because the tents didn't have walls on them. And now Paulie, Jeremy, you guys have come up in a generation where every tent is massive and has walls. You got to stay in your own group. You get this like mob mentality. You aren't talking to drivers maybe as much as before. So I don't know. I mean, from your group, Jeremy, do you feel like sometimes drivers, when you run K, when you run X30, do some guys run differently than others when you go to pass them, when you go to block them, when you race around them?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like the different groups of drivers. I mean, I've raced KA almost all last year in junior, and I mean, I just got used to the different driver, I guess, and every driver was really different with how they defended and passed and how aggressive they were.
So, Race here again, to give kind of some more light onto, like, again, your thoughts on, getting back into Brandon. Like, look, you don't want to run rough, but, in your perspective, and I would say your perspective is very similar to that of everybody else in your age group, slightly younger, slightly older from that era of racing, where if you throw a pebble at my house, I'll throw a brick back your way to make you respect me, right?
Yeah, it's not exactly that harsh, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was always raised you race people the way you want to be raced. You take responsibility for your actions on and off the racetrack. And you don't ever be the first one to throw the punch, but you make sure that you're the last one to. And if your point just can't be taken across, I mean, it's as easy as having a conversation that didn't end with, F you, I'll see you in the main or something like that. Like that's enough right there to put somebody off, let alone an incident. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a different era I was raised in but we all had more respect for one another. Like when we've had this conversation on this podcast, 5 or 6 times now with different people, old and young, and we rehash the same thing. It's not something, I changed coming back to a KA race that it got so crazy. You can look back at every race that's pretty much live streamed in a KA race, and it's insane. But back then we had more respect for one another because that's how everybody drove. That's how everybody thought. That's how it went. And there was actually a decent amount of communication between drivers. It was as easy as, hey man, I didn't appreciate you crowding me that much on the exit of a corner when you made this pass. Let's make sure we don't do that again. Not unless really an or else situation, but and we all know as drivers, we know going into that, if you're going to shunt somebody, move them, blast them, whatever, what you just did. Going into it that you swerved that guy, that you did that deep down, whether you admit it on this podcast or to that person or to your team or not, what you did. And that I have like zero tolerance for, because I know what I do when I do something wrong. And I try to be the first to admit when I'm in the wrong. Like I flat out ruined Jeremy's race for the win. And I've talked to him about it. He was the first person I talked to when I got out of the go-kart in that main event, because I felt so bad as soon as it happened. I made a bad judgment call, and I've talked to his grandfather and his father about it since then, to make sure that it wasn't something that was malicious, and that it's something that definitely not a proud or good moment. But you don't see that very often. I don't get apologies when somebody rails you off the racetrack. It's kind of like it doesn't get talked about, and then it seems like the kids now, they just kind of go off in their cliques and talk in Discord about those other kids, and they just come back and keep wrecking each other instead of having a resolution through communication.
Jeremy, what was your take on that too? I mean, obviously Race went out of his way to talk to you. I mean, has that happened a lot, or have you seen a lot more of the latter where he's describing, where like guys just get into wrecks and then don't really talk much more?
I mean, like the thing with me and Cole, me and Cole ended up talking it out. I mean, I walked up to him and we ended up shaking hands and walking away. So, I mean, that's really my only experience. Same thing with Race. So I've really had the talking experience instead of just the keep wrecking experience.
Braden, and then I'm going to get to Jake and Marijn and Paulie. Braden, I mean, you're kind of like myself, a little bit between both from your racing experience. And what was your take on seeing Brandon and Race together, and then hearing that and seeing some of the stuff that went on this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that situation with Brandon and Race is no good on either part. I think definitely a bit over the edge, especially on, well, nothing personal, Race, but driving over somebody. It's definitely uncalled for. But I mean, for me, the racing is definitely way more disrespectful than it was even 5 years ago. I mean, it's not more aggressive, because like it was just as aggressive back then, but it was just way more. I don't know. You could send passes in from way back, and still, like, if somebody knew they were coming down the inside, it wasn't like you were just gonna like shunt them in the next corner or anything. And I've raced Brandon like probably more than I've raced anyone else, maybe in karting in general, because him and I were always coming up racing against each other in Yamaha and X30. And like we had a ton of close battles, and I can't say that we ever had anything dirty happen between us. But I don't know, it just seems like nowadays, I don't know if it's just people wanting to take the easy way out and just move somebody out of the way, or if they're just being told that or what. But it's I don't know, it's definitely just more disrespectful. I mean, I've had good experiences where like somebody has done me wrong, especially in like it was last Summer Nats. I had there was one altercation I had on track, and I was lacking pace. I had too low a sprocket on. I was like trying to defend, trying to get this guy to work with me and draft with me, because I thought I had decent pace as long as I could get off the corner. I was just too low in sprocket. And this guy ended up getting frustrated after I passed him 2-3 times and ended up just like completely swerving into the side of me on the straightaway. And I went up to him after that and I was like, dude, like, come on, man. Like you can injure somebody out here like that. And, you know, he was like, oh man, I'm really sorry. And we talked out and shook hands. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard.
Jake, let's go ahead. We'll put you on screen and have you kind of react to your wreck and here and then talk about your experience of the weekend.
Away into the sweeper for the second time.
Yeah, my mistake there. Alex Stanfield, I think, is lined up for the second heat there. This is Aiden Levy, as you mentioned, they're running P3. Oh, what a lot of contact right there.
Parking lot coming out of that airpin, and now they're going to go 2x2 down.
And we got Jake
French
turned into the wall.
God, you can see him. Hopefully is okay. That was a heavy, heavy impact. He is not going to.
So, Jake, you're getting up there in age. How's the back?
It was the neck. Well, it was the back of the neck when it happened, and then the next morning I went to get out of bed and it was the front of the neck. So the neck.
How did you crash on the straightaway?
Because absolutely no kid had any idea of the consequences of trying to make it 4 wide in the grass and on the track, and each other and turned me.
Yeah.
So
I guess so.
All right. So again, I mean, obviously a lot of the stuff same said. I mean, Jake, do you kind of echo a lot of what Race said, what these guys said? I mean, where do you kind of fall on how the weekend was and how the racing's been getting back into it for KA?
My opinion's a little bit different. You know, there's a lot of these kids, and I'm not going to throw out names, but they don't really respect the materials they have nowadays. You know, back, you know, I think even Ray said it, and right in 5, 6, 7 years ago, you know, it was more privateer racing. We were kind of doing our own thing, so we respected our equipment. We wanted to have a good time and all that. Now it's everybody seems like they have a chip on their shoulder. They're going into moves that they have no idea can or cannot work. They don't think of the consequences, and you know sometimes it can get somebody hurt. You know, unfortunately, I got the short end of the stick on the chaos on the straightaway. Everybody going for the same position at one time, making it 4 wide and get turned on the straightaway. But I don't know. I mean, it is a little bit of respect, but more of other things, just not thinking of consequences and, you know, respect not only for the other drivers, but, you know, for their equipment and teams.
Also, definitely, I feel like people nowadays are just so much less likely to like back out of a pass. Like if you're going in, like there's been so many times where I'm going for something that's like super ambitious. And then I just like see where the guy I'm like trying to overtake breaks, and I'm like, okay, yeah, there's no way that I can do this anymore. And then you just have to pull out. Seems like nobody's really backing out of those moves anymore. And then you'll just get 2 people that have broke way too late for the corner, just go in hitting into each other, and then they just end up crashing.
Paulie, what's your take on this deal?
I definitely think drivers now don't really value what they have. I know, like anytime. I can't say I'm a clean driver at all, or I used to be. I'm a lot better than I was, but I definitely have started to value the equipment that I have, and I definitely don't appreciate when I get my stuff junked up. I know I've done it to people, and I usually I'm the type to come up and tell you straight up, and I don't really run away to my parents or to my team owner, and I don't like when people say someone dirtied me or say I dirtied them, and they want to come up to my parents or the team owner and kind of talk dirty and whatever, talk aggressively, saying, okay, you're done next time, just come talk to me, whatever. If we can't figure it out, I'm expecting the retaliation. That's how it is. If I did you dirty, I'm expecting it fully back. But if I get dirtied and you don't take the time to come apologize to me, then I'm gonna retaliate, because I don't like my equipment tore up, because it costs money and I don't like spending money. So it's yeah, I definitely think the racing is getting a little bit more dirtier. I think kids kind of have their parents' money, so they kind of don't value their equipment, and they don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, so, I had this conversation again, like I said, a lot with Brandon and Race yesterday when I was getting you guys on the show. And Race, we'll get into the series a little bit after this last commercial break too, of kind of the differences in officiating, what's needed and what's not. But, I think the dialogue thing, I think, is huge. Having drivers talking to each other, because like Race said and like Jake said, when you moved up, and even when Braden and Brandon moved up, there was a kind of somewhat of a consistent standing guard that kind of lets you know when you did something out of line, and it was consistent for the most part across the board when you crossed it. When you did something wrong, when you did someone dirty. If you did it to one guy, you could have done it to any of 10 that were all at the front of the field or mid of the field, and they all would have had a similar reaction, either retaliating or at minimum coming and saying in the scale line, like, look, what you did is not okay. We don't like to do that here. Etc. And for whatever reason in the KA class, and I think there's a lot of reasons as to why, it seems there isn't that. And we're kind of at this point where now, in my opinion, it unfortunately falls onto the series to kind of set a standard and to right that road. So that way by 2023, when the next batch of juniors comes up, if the standard of racing is kind of corrected over the next few races of being really harsh on penalties and catching 90% of the stuff that goes on, then the 2023 junior class that becomes rookies in KA Senior will have a 75% of the field being returning drivers that would know exactly what's expected and what's supposed to be, what's good and what's not, what's okay, what's not. Are you allowed to move? Are you allowed to do this? Nobody seems to like swerving. A lot of guys in that class have gotten away with it. And to Race and Brandon's point, you guys can talk about it, Race, you even mentioned, you thought and were fully ready for a penalty to come for your incident with Jeremy in the last corner, and it didn't, and Brandon, you looked back, you didn't think you got into Race as hard as you did in the pre-final for the lead. You did. No penalty there. And so that obviously also hurts it too. And for both of you guys, you end up coming away with a bad taste in your mouth because sometimes you got caught for a speeding ticket, basically. Sometimes you didn't. And the way that the cards fell, you felt like, I was kind of being discriminated against for one way or another, whether it was a specific official in a specific section looking at you, or just because of the fact that, you're not, maybe as tight as the other guy is with the series. And that's honestly, in my opinion, from seeing the back of these series, and some guys may disagree with me, and some of our viewers may think that I'm just kissing up, but I promise you I'm not. I don't know of any series besides Mike Tetro's WK that is purely favoritism and reverses penalties off of sponsors. There's been here and there stuff, but a lot of the race officiating that's done now is just different guys that care about it and they want to hit it. But even talking to all of them at this weekend, they didn't have scissor lifts, and there were a lot of go-karts on track with back-to-back classes. I mean, kart racing officiating is probably the hardest racing officiating, I think, in the world, because you have back-to-back races. Cup racing, sports car racing, open wheel racing. They either have individual race directors for a specific division that have the entire day to focus on that division's races, which they're on track less, or even in Scooz's case where they did half and half. You just don't have time to pause the day and go back through and use more footage. In USPKS's case, right now, with the way the rules stand, they don't use the broadcast footage, which is new for this year, to be fair, our stream stuff. And I'm not going to brag on our angles. There's some stuff we've got to work on. I want to get more cameras. I want to get our angles a little bit better, but you can't. So the officials are doing what they can, but they're not hitting everything. So I don't know where the right answer fully lies, and I don't know what every series can financially afford in terms of how many officials are on track and what the right structure is. But there was some stuff missed. And now the series is in a spot, and not just USPKS. I mean, SCUSA, Rock, any of the majors that are going to have races, Miami Grands as well, they're going to need to come down harder on everybody to right the wrong of the class, to get it back to that point where drivers have respect. Because if you go back 5-10 years ago, when drivers have the respect, the officiating is much easier, and you're just kind of tidying things up. Now there's a whole message that has to be sent, which was the idea with the pushback bumpers in the same way too. But who's that? Races, Mike. A little bit off, but all good race. But I don't know. To me, that's my point with it. I've seen these series; they're trying, but we're not getting that level of dialogue. I thought what would be really, really cool is if you had at least some pre-race and post-race debriefings per class, because the drivers meetings that we have for all these major series now, we have 300 drivers. We talk about where the transponder should be placed, turn in your tech sheets, race clean, basics for the weekend. But it's different than a driver's meeting for, let's say, a car series or some other racing event that has the drivers from each class sitting down together. I mean, race, you even joked on the grid for one of the sessions, you were like, next KA race you go run, you're going to go out there and just group them all together yourself, and do a driver's meeting to say, hey, how do we want to race, and let's get some respect going.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more simple than that. And I hate that it has to fall on the series because it really shouldn't. It should kind of go between racers, I've raced Jake for, I think since Rotax mini stuff back in the day. And, going through the shifter ranks, there's 8-9 of us that'll all shake hands before and after a race and, have an open discussion about what we did and didn't enjoy about our race that day and have a mutual respect. So I think a lot of it is, everything that we talked about earlier is as simple as just having, if everybody started with respect, knowing that, you do somebody wrong and they're probably going to do you back or one way or another, whether you get a penalty, like there's just got to be some sense of responsibility for your own actions out there. And that really just comes down to us as drivers, just having that mutual respect, at least starting on that level playing field and letting the cards shake out how they do. But it does suck that the series has to now implement so many things just for us to be happy. I won't sugarcoat it. I was pretty pissed when Brandon didn't get a penalty, but I got a penalty the day before for the exact same thing. That was actually wrong, and kudos to the series. They did reverse when I protested it, but it was the same incident, and I was like, okay, well, you can't do one and not the other, especially when you should be watching for the lead. But at the end of the day, that shouldn't have happened regardless between us. And, so I think we can fix a lot of it internally on the grid between drivers, and the series can continue to do the best they can to catch all the penalties. I saw somewhere that they said they had over 300 penalties they served a day or, between the 2 days or something. So it's kind of ridiculous everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving a whole lot, and we're going to get to more of that, touch back a little bit, give everyone's closing thoughts, and we've got a lot of great questions from you guys and great comments in the comment section, so we're going to touch on all that. So if you have any more questions for any of the guys, you can see on the left side, right, I guess my right, your right side, my left side of the screen, any of these guys right here, send them in during this commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more on different outside-the-box ideas of what we can do to clean this stuff up, because this isn't a new problem. The Cup Karts North America event in Charlotte Motor Speedway had a number of red flags and the same type of issue in the same comments, where they had so many drivers coming in, a bunch from different backgrounds, crashing, and you can see the Facebook comments saying, man, I don't want to run there anymore. They don't want to go and spend the money for that event. And the same here at the US Pro Kart Series, the same at SuperKarts USA. And as an industry, as a sport, we've been killing series for the last 2 decades because they get big, then the wrecks happen, the series gets blamed, the series goes too hard, people get mad either way, and the series dies, and we start the cycle over again. So I really think it's important, and I think it's great that we have this platform that we do now here with Happy Hour, and just in general with the sport moving in a very positive direction, to have an open discussion and shine the light on these dark corners and talk about the issues and how we can try and solve them and to get the respect back and to get more going. So we're going to talk about all that when we come back. Like I said, I really enjoy seeing your guys' questions. I know these guys do as well. Sorry, I'm off this way. So send them in here in the comments. If you've already sent one, I'm going to go right to the top and ask some more in. We'll come back right after this.
Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jekko Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. As the Western importer of the Praga and Formula K chassis brands, Leading Edge Motorsports is a high-performance kart shop and race team with a simple mission: teach others the joy of high-performance driving, supply our customers with the highest quality products and services, and most of all, win races. With our remarkable racing inventory, expert services, and top-ranked national-level team to back it up, We'll help to get your new kart racing package up and running fast. From arrive and drive service to kart preparation and driver coaching to the parts you need to get you back on the racetrack, Leading Edge Motorsports is the industry answer.
I'm Billy Vincent, owner of MPG Motorsports. What we do at MPG is we try to keep it a nice, fun family atmosphere, try to combine sort of the bigger things and of the bigger teams and the professionalism down with sort of some of the fun sort of family-oriented atmosphere. We try to not only develop drivers, but also the parents and the families for just in knowledge in general in motorsports. It all starts in karting. What we try to do is try to help the drivers, the moms, the dads understand the sport of motorsports in general, not just karting, but what it takes to get all the way up through. Whether you end up wanting to be a driver or a mechanic or an engineer, you know, we can help you with that, and that's what we're here for. If you're interested in joining us at MPG, our home base is at Whiteland Raceway Park in Indianapolis, and you can contact us at info@willpowerkart.com, and one of our great people will reach out to you, and we'll try to put the best program together.
At New Gen Motorsport, we're committed to using our 10-plus years of experience and knowledge to help grow the sport of karting from the bottom up. Our goal is to make karting more accessible to the average person, lessening the financial burden of getting started, and making the learning curve as small as possible. Our passion is training and developing drivers, mechanics, and engineers to not only be the best they can be in karting, but also for careers in the much larger world of professional motorsports. A strong foundation makes building bigger easier. Let us be that foundation for your karting and motorsports career. Be part of the new generation of motorsport. Contact us today to schedule your test day, arrive and drive race event, or to inquire about how we can help get you started in your own new gen racing kart.
All right, guys, welcome back here. So open challenge first before we get into questions, so it gives me time to go through our Q&A. We're going to go top to bottom here. Well, actually, I'll start with race and give Jeremy the chance to come back around because Jeremy is a little late to join in the conversation. Is there anything that these series can do differently to kind of push the word respect back to drivers? And not just, I don't want these comments to be blanket statements where it's like, yeah, the drivers need more respect or we need this, we need that, which is true. But what can we do, or what can the drivers do? What can the series do to move forward to start to rectify this issue? Because it's nationwide, it's across the board. 206 KA100. Obviously, X30 is a little bit better in senior. It looked like this weekend. The shifter stuff, you have a smaller crowd at the and a lot of the same front runners seem to have that respect. So, Race, you've been involved in a lot of these discussions. You've talked about series. You and I talk at length about what we should do better for the sport. What do you think, if anything, these series can do better, or that they aren't doing that they should be doing?
I am definitely in favor of having a separate drivers meeting per class. I think it could be pretty easy to do, even if they did it, you know, right after qualifying, you go to an area where they meet with your class specifically, and they can come up with, you know, current events and things that are either problems or talking points for drivers and the series to talk back to the drivers specifically on. I think that could help, and I think it'd be pretty easy to implement. And then, you know, between drivers, you know, I always just try and have an open line of communication with anybody. I approached Brandon after the incident. I also approached John Burke because we got into it Saturday. And I was, you know, like I said, I went right up to Jeremy after our incident. So, you know, just having an open dialogue with your competition and your fellow competitors, I think is super important, and it shows a lot about your character.
Paulie, what do you think? What can we do different? What can the sport do different?
Honestly, I missed the question. So, what was the question?
Why is it every time I try to give you talking time on this show, Paulie, you don't pay attention? This is why I don't ever come to you.
Well, I was in a daze. I was just reading.
It was a pretty
comments.
vague question, to be fair, Xander.
I was reading these questions or these
all
comments.
right. What comment question you want to pull up, Paulie? Were you reading the comment question you want to pull?
No, I was just reading them. I was just
Ridiculous.
going down the line.
Jake, Marian, what can the sport do to kind of get some respect back going here? What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't think that the driver meeting separate classes is a good thing, really, because we have that in Europe, and I know no one says a thing, and we just listen to whatever the race director has to say, and that's it, we leave. So yeah, I don't think that's really the thing that needs working. It's just the drivers needs to talk to each other a bit more, because I feel like in X30, especially at the top, we've all got quite a bit of respect for each other, and we leave each other just enough room on the track. Like, we get very close, and the racing's very hard, but yeah, we've got enough respect to like not take each other out. So I think just a little bit more of that. People need to become a bit more friends with each other, and you see that on track as well.
Jake, what about you?
I mean, I wouldn't think it would be whole much of what the series can do. It's more of kind of what Ray said, and even Marijn said it was is drivers just need to talk more. And certain classes, like you were saying, the front runners of X30, even us shifter guys, we respect each other, been racing against each other for a while. But like the KA Senior, you got a lot of juniors moving up. You have guys like me and Race that have been racing for a while, and it's a lot of unknown driver to driver. And it's just an easier way to, have conflict. We don't really know each other that well, don't know how we race around each other. And sometimes, they're throwing in stupid moves and over blocking and stuff like that. I don't know. It's not, I don't know if the series can do a whole lot about it. It's just more of what the drivers can do, talking about it with each other.
Brandon, what do you think here? Can the series do anything to kind of rectify? Is there anything the drivers can do or a movement to get the drivers unionized in a way?
Well, I definitely think, talking to each other would help. 'Cause I know like a long, long time ago, Zach Holden and we always had issues on the track, and it wasn't necessarily, I didn't dislike Zach. Zach didn't dislike me. It was kind of mainly our parents. I mean, we were young enough where they're influencing kind of what we thought. I mean, we were 10, 11, 12 at the time. So, but then like we were at Daytona one year, Zach and I just started talking, and then my friend group kind of met his friend group and vice versa. And then everything kind of got better. And I kind of talked to my parents like, hey, this guy's not that bad. So, obviously now I'm older. Everybody's older now. We can all make decisions on our own. And I talked to people on the grid. Like I was wish Chase Hand luck. I had never talked to him before. I talked to Jeremy, not that much, but I know what he's done. He seems respectful and everything like that. And I was like shaking hands with people before the race, and I didn't have an issue with anybody on track except for race. So it seems like talking helped. It helped back then, but as for a series standpoint, I don't know. I mean, I hate when people tell me how to do my job. I don't want to tell them how to do theirs, but I really don't know what could help. So yeah. As for talking, I think that would probably be best. The drivers meeting, separate drivers meeting. I don't know about that one. Yeah, I don't know. That's probably the best option I could think of now.
Braden, what about you? I mean, what do we do to kind of work on this? Like you said, you've noticed a lack of respect, but the aggression hasn't gone down or up in any way. I mean, is there anything to kind of turn that back around?
Yeah, I definitely think if the drivers just talk to each other more, that's definitely the best thing. I think if all the drivers, as soon as they have an altercation on track, just go and talk to the guy, like 2 weekends, the racing would be twice as clean as it is now, like 100%. That, and then also just, most of the team owners and all that, and most of the coaches, I'm sure are good, but there's definitely some coaches and team owners out there that encourage that. So I think also it will start with the team owners all taking crackdown and telling the drivers, no, like you cannot, this isn't acceptable. You need to drive clean. You need to make your passes. You need to set up your passes and make them cleanly. And if you can't do that, then don't make the move. And I think that would also help some.
Paulie, now that you've heard some responses, do you have any other thoughts or anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely think the only thing I could say about the series, like, there's not much, like everybody said, not much they could really do. But if you kind of see a driver that's constantly causing problems, just kind of first have a conversation with them, say, hey, no more of this stuff, or else we're gonna have to throw you out. We're gonna have to ban you for a race, or you come back, keep doing it, then you're done for the year. I think you kind of do that. After you have the talk with them, if they're kind of not listening, just say, hey, you're done. You're done for the weekend, whatever. But no, I definitely think going out and talking to other drivers is definitely a big help. You kind of get to know everyone, and you guys have a respect for each other. And kind of like, I knew of Kremers, but I've never actually met him. But when he first came here, we were both starting in the back. We said, what's up? Let's go to the front, kind of that type of deal. It's not, you don't really have to just you don't have to talk to them for long. You don't have to be all buddy with them, but you kind of just show them that respect, and they show you that respect.
Jeremy, what do you think here? New kid on the block, rookie on the year.
I mean, like, definitely people. I mean, I've drove with like Burke since Mini. We raced in KA this weekend. I mean, we raced really hard, but we never wrecked each other. As people I've never raced, it's kind of hard to know what they're gonna do and figure out what you want to do to get around them. But definitely the talking part. I mean, I did talk to Brandon a little bit. I talked to Race more, and I mean, just being more vocal helped me out quite a bit.
I think this one was good, and this was a comment sent out on Facebook here from Frank Mastandria. I think this is something actually that if the series could afford the time and to have kind of the protest official or even just the penalty official kind of be able to mediate this a little bit, similar to how this conversation's going in the case of Brandon and Race earlier, instead of just going up to the driver and giving them a penalty slip for something they did, pulling the victim aside too and having a conversation with both drivers prior to issuing the penalty. I think that's actually kind of an out-of-the-box idea that wouldn't really cost a whole lot more if they had enough manpower that they could do it and have a little more time to talk through the scales for everyone that's getting like a avoidable contact penalty or swerving penalty. Because again, like I think you have that conversation as the protest official, then you kind of once you make the decision. There's sometimes the officials will go to guys and the victim will be like, no, let that go. Like that guy doesn't deserve a penalty, and the series will leave it because they never really had the conversation until the offending driver caused a protest. So I think that's actually a really good idea, Frank, and I appreciate you sending the comment in. So thanks for watching and tuning in. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? If you had to go face to face with the guy that you wronged or got wronged by, and then it kind of the official starts the conversation, so you're almost forced into it. Anyone thoughts on it? Race, guys.
So
Brandon?
I was a corner worker for the CKNA race last year. Sometime in the summer, I had some time. And my girlfriend actually was like, because she works there, she's a tire girl. It's what everybody knows her as. So she was like, yeah, we need help. Can you do this? And there was a call that I had called in, and I mean, it was someone that's right next to each other, just pushed them right off. Something simple like that. I was like, okay, call that one in. They came up to me. They're like, okay, he's gonna want to protest it, but before he puts the money in, you want to talk to him, kind of settle him down, think of what answer what any questions he had. And sure enough, they came up to me. I told them my reasoning, and they were mad, of course. But I was like, I mean, you were right next to him. You pushed him right off. I mean, I don't know what else there is more to argue with that. So I guess it also saved him money, and then they kind of got a little bit closure out of it, and kind of took on my thoughts, and I got to hear what they thought. And I mean, obviously, I'm sure they weren't happy with it. I mean, you're never happy when you get a penalty, obviously, but it seemed to. I don't know. I mean, I understood where they're coming from. I don't know if they understood where I was coming from, but I mean, we at least got to talk it out.
Let's go through some of the viewer questions while we've got time, everybody, here before we wrap this show up here tonight. This was from Nick Persing over on YouTube. He said, what do we think about time penalties versus position-based penalties? For reference, I got sent while I was in the lead of a KA race at a Pro Kart regional in California. The guy got a 5-second penalty, still got third. So there's a lot of different ways guys can do penalties. Let's go around the room. Quick thoughts on that, as short as possible. Do you like where it's position-based, where the guy can come back? Or time-based? Or do you like where it's positioned where no matter what, if you sent a guy to 30th, you've got to go back to 31st? Jeremy, let's start with you. Which one do you prefer?
I mean, it's really difficult to tell because like some things are time penalties. So I mean, I can blow somebody through a wall and get a bumper penalty and win by 5 seconds and still win the race. So I mean, it's really 50-50 with the goals. You can't really.
But like what? Yeah. But like, what would you think on that? Like, would you rather it always be one way or the other, or do you still think 50-50?
I mean, I would rather the time because you still have that chance, like I said, just to get away and you can still have that win.
Race, what about you? Time versus position. Have you ever thought about one way or the other, or the way penalties go?
Yeah, I think they both fit in whatever certain aspect they're there for. But as far, I guess we're talking about the pushback, I would also prefer a time penalty versus a position penalty, because if you did your job most of that race and you just had a bobble, you could still end up with a victory or a podium or wherever you could have ended up.
Jake, Marijn, put time versus position penalties. Any preference?
I think depending on how severe the incident is, a position penalty. I prefer time penalties, as like you guys said. Like if you make a small bump and run, you can still get away and do your job and win the race. fairly fair and square, I suppose. But if you send somebody off the track and they end up finishing 30th, I think you should go back down to 31st.
What about you, Jake?
I'm gonna be on the opposite side. I think it should be more in position. I think if you battling for the win and you got 8 guys that are going at it, and something happens, and you get a 3-position penalty instead of getting a 5-second penalty, and you end up 10th. It could go both ways, but I think the position thing is a little more consistent, I should say. But it is what they did say. If you happen to get a penalty and you get the 5-second gap, yeah, you still win the race. But I think the position one is more consistent.
Paulie, what about you?
I think time. I like time just because sometimes you don't intentionally do something, and obviously you have to deal with your consequences. But say you just move someone offline and they lose a few spots, I don't think you should be put all the way behind them just because. I think maybe you should still get a penalty, but I don't think, say you move them offline, they finish 6th and you end up winning. I don't think it should be, okay, now you're 7th. But I agree with the time penalties, unless you clearly just blow someone through the wall, kind of like what Fletcher said. Then I think, yeah, you deserve to be put behind them. But if you're kind of just moving them offline and they get in the rubber or the dirty track, then that's, I don't know. So I think it can go both ways. But
Brandon, Braden, quickly, you guys kind of agree, or is there anything on there from the guys above here that you disagree with? Brandon, you first.
I see both sides. I think if it's a little thing like getting it in the back, like especially early in the race, and then they could end up getting taken out from someone. I mean, if you're getting put behind them, I mean, that's that second half isn't your fault. But then I guess if you get ran over intentionally and taken out and put in the wall, then I think that's a bigger deal. I think you should be. But in my case, I ended up finishing 4th, so it wouldn't have really mattered that much. But yeah, I think it depends how bad the incident is.
Braden, any other comments on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that position penalties are much more consistent. I don't know. The time penalties just seem to always be, especially in like X30 Senior, fields be super close. And I don't know. I feel like the time penalties always are way too harsh. Like, especially when it used to be like 5 seconds and 10 seconds for bumper penalties. That was ridiculous, especially because you could get them so easily some of the time. But no, I think position penalties for me are always like, that's the thing, like as drivers we care about is the position. So if you knock somebody off, you should get a 4 or 6 position penalty, because there's a lot of time. Like you could get a 3-second penalty in a very spread apart race and like barely lose a position. So I don't think that's really fair.
Fair enough. Marijn, you've got some fans out there. In fact, kind of American team guy Jake Motas says you can not only drive shifter, he says your family's Russian. What do you got to say to that?
The second part's definitely not true. The first part, yeah, that's up to you guys.
We'll keep going through. There were some other ones here. There was one good one. Shoot, I had to find it.
I
here.
like his recent TikToks.
Yeah.
Lemke doesn't like them. How's your
My
neck?
neck's still a little bit sore.
Oh, all right,
a little
here
bit
we
sore.
go.
I'm gonna need that massage.
Yeah, me and you both.
All right. Okay, so for all you guys on the screen, everybody knows exactly what a Euro swerve is.
I don't.
Does anyone here? What do you mean you don't? You're where it comes from.
No. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
The reason they call it that is because we see it all the time over in European karting.
Oh.
All right. Well, it's very simple. It's when you're on the straightaway and you look over and someone's next to you and you don't want them to be next to you anymore, so you just go and you swerve them and you hit them.
That's what I do all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Now Marijn.
Yeah, put it that way. Okay. Yeah.
Get Marijn out of the show here. Marjin's ridiculous. I don't think there's a single person on here that actually enjoys it. Marijn, do you actually enjoy it and having that part of the racing is guys swerving at each other in a straight line?
I mean, no, swerving, not closing someone down a little bit and making it hard to get overtaken. Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a certain point, like there's a line you cannot cross, and that's when if someone's actually behind you, you cannot just blatantly take them out and crash them out of the race. Basically, what the guys that do Jake down the straight, just crashing them out.
Yeah, no, and that's what they're talking about. Not necessarily like closing a guy off as you get down into the corner, but they're mainly referencing in Ricky's comment when we say the Euro swerve in the U.S. or the commonplace term is midway down the straightaway. When there's no turn in sight, you're far off from the previous turn, and you just don't want to be passed anymore. You just start hitting the guy. I don't think anyone wants that. I don't know. Anyone speak up, forever hold your peace. If anyone wants the Euro swerve to be part.
People doing that this weekend? I haven't really seen too much of that.
There was one incident. Yeah, there's some of it going on in junior. There was one KA Senior on Thursday practice that did it.
On practice, you said?
Yeah, on Thursday practice, he got crossed up coming out of turn 9, the corner before the long straightaway down the backstretch to the hairpin. He made the pass, then he got over-undered, and he was frustrated that he got over-undered and did it once, did it twice, wrecked the guy. He keeps going.
He also took out someone else with them that just had no involvement in it. But
so I don't think there's anybody that wants this here. I don't think there's any place for that.
No.
I think that stuff's very dangerous.
Yeah.
I think that's a free trip to the barriers.
I agree. I remember even at a club race, I got swerved one time, so I just shipped the guy in the wall. So.
Yeah, you're done if you want to swerve down. That is just so freaking dangerous. It's ridiculous.
Like they're hauling the mail going down the straightaway, and then someone's just trying to swerve you. I mean, one little wrong incident can send you flying, and I just think that that's very dangerous.
Yeah. So in other words, we're going to be deporting Marijn, kicking him out of the country because he didn't say no to that. So Marijn, nice knowing you, buddy. We'll see you later.
It's because his parents are Russian. That's why he should get deported.
Yeah. Your Russian family also needs to get out of here. See you later, Marijn. Let's go through here. I think there's a few more that may have come in. Oh, all right. This was a good one from Kristen Roberts. She sent this a couple times. Sorry, I wanted to put this up. Okay, so this is something we've actually mentioned a little bit on the show, and that's doing a point system. So this is, let's say you've got all of the 15 major national events for the year: Rock Winter Tour, US Pro Kart Series, SKUSA Pro Tour, SKUSA Winter Series, Supernats, Rock Vegas, and Miami Grands. That makes up 15 majors. And so let's say a point system for penalties. You show up, you get too many points. You could even have it individually in the series, but I think it works best if you got the 3 major promoters to work together and have a joint system. If, let's say, you go and Paulie has shipped a guy and gotten a penalty 3 races in a row, Paulie's got to sit out the next one or go down and run a regional race to knock the points halfway off. You know, like if you run a clean race, you can, like a weekend where you get 0 penalties. And obviously, if you protest, you get it reversed. That wouldn't matter, but run a clean race, you get the points erased over time. But if you go weekend to weekend, consistently collecting penalties, I think that's an out of the box idea too. And what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, but I think it would be very hard to implement, especially because most of the penalties nowadays are being assessed through bumper penalties, and you can get those randomly. I think it'd be hard to go off that. I mean, especially if you're a driver that's always in like that mid to like, bottom third of the field where just like anything happens and like there's just craziness. Like I feel like you could be, especially if it's including bumper penalties, it would be really difficult to not for some drivers. They would just be getting a lot of penalties. I don't know.
Yeah,
I kind of agree with him. I mean, there are actually a lot of organizations. I mean, heck, F1 does it. They have a point system for a bad driver and taking out a driver, whatever it is. But it's licensed system. Their super licensed system points thing. But I don't know. I don't think throughout the series, all the series, they don't have enough manpower to keep it up. You can get penalties with the bumpers, and they hand out a lot of those, so it'd be hard to keep them all tallied.
I don't know. I feel like I was able to do a pretty good job with this right over here. This is a little bit off task, but we got our fantasy league. I got it to go over the weekend. We got a little bit of a change. Nate Cicero. It took me a second. I had to learn Google Sheets on one formula, but then I got it. There was no insider trading or Pete Rose. Nate just picked himself and he ran really good, so we got the hat. Sorry, I forgot to put this in the show earlier. But it is possible. It's tough to tally, but we've got the tech now. You can run a tally and just put it in that a pushback penalty is identified differently in a spreadsheet. It could work. I think it could. I might be wrong. But Gary Osterholt, he made a good point. Do we think U.S. karting promoters would work together? I don't know, boys. Anyone think that they will? They don't?
Absolutely not.
Not gonna happen. Never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Especially if somebody can't race in their series and can't spend money in their series after getting penalties in a different one. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's never.
Yeah, that might not fly too well. It would be cool, though. It would be cool. Listen, I just want to put this up on the screen. I don't actually have
Thanks, Jake.
But no, in all seriousness, I think this was a great show. I appreciate having you guys on. I want to, I guess kind of send it around. We got the most viewers we've ever had for a show like this here. Jeremy's first time on in a while. So closing thoughts here. Race, Brandon, let's kick it off with you here. Are you ready to ban Race Liberante from any birthday parties you got coming up?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think it was hopefully a one-time thing. I don't know. I try to let things go. I try to because I mean that was, you could say me hitting him was uncalled for, but I mean intentionally wrecking somebody and wrecking my stuff and then almost hurting my arm bad. It still hurts. It's all bruised up, wrist, tricep, bicep, shoulder. It's hurting. Doing that, and then we're also a small team. It's me and my dad. I mean, we drove there. My mom was down there as well, but I don't have anybody else. So doing that is bull crap. But I mean, I like to let things go. I mean, I would like someone else to do the same for me. So the whole respect thing, it's got to be there. Obviously, I don't know the way to get it, but it's got to be there. I already told my parents, I'm like, as far as I looked at it after we talked, I think it's a clean slate. Like I said before, I don't know how he feels about it, but that's how I'm taking it. So I guess we'll see.
All right, Race, on to you. Good way to segue here. What's the deal? Is Brandon going to get a beer from the RF pit anytime soon?
Well, I'll start by saying, what anybody does to me or with me or whatever on track, I don't let it reflect on them personally off track, and I hope the same for my competitors. But yeah, he's welcome for a beer any day of the week. Everybody knows we like to have a good time after hours, so everybody's always welcome. But yeah, no, I think we're cool. We had, like I said, to me the communication thing is key. I wish I didn't go at him as hot after the pre-final, and maybe we could have had a better conversation, and where I left the scale line in that pre-final a little happier, and maybe wouldn't have made some of the decisions I made. But at the end of the day, I think everybody should take responsibility for their actions on the racetrack, and the officials do their job the best they can, and we'll all keep racing and keep the circus moving to the next racetrack each weekend.
I like it. Speaking of circus racetrack each weekend, Marijn and Jake, I think it's almost bedtime in the hotel. Any closing thoughts for the fans?
Our hair's getting long, so we hope we were going to win this weekend.
Yeah, we need to win this weekend.
Oh, is that the bet? You guys get to cut your hair when you finally get a win and stop getting second?
Yeah, and then if one of us wins before the other one, the loser has to grow a perm mustache like Race.
I like it.
I may have one next year.
Next year, yeah.
I'll have mine the next race.
Very nice, boys. Very nice. Paulie, you've got a lot of airtime tonight. Let's close you off here with yours. Closing thoughts. Anything?
I've got nothing. I don't have anything.
I'm kicking you off this show. I'm so tired of having you on this show.
All right. I'm done. I'm out.
Braden, closing thoughts, man. What do you got? Oh, he's gone. Oh, man.
Man, I can't believe there's still like 180 people watching this. Jesus Christ.
All right. That's good closing thoughts for Braden. Jeremy, thanks for coming on. What are your closing thoughts?
Sorry if you picked me for fantasy.
You better be.
That's all I got.
So, you got 9 more rounds to redeem yourself, Jeremy. We lost Paulie. I'm going to try and apologize and get him back. We do actually like him around here. I want that to be known and publicly stated. Thanks, as always, for tuning in, everybody. KC Happy Hour comes back again next Tuesday night. We're going to be back with a Rock Cup Florida Winter Tour debrief. We haven't done too much. Those 3 guys over there, they're going to be there. There's more that'll be there. And hopefully Jake finally can cut the flow off, because it's looking a little weird with that receding hairline, But anyway.
Thanks.
Hey, it's all right. You look great with a hat on, Jake. No, in all seriousness, I think Jake's got a great pick. If we had fantasy this weekend, we don't. We'll have fantasy starting at the opening round of the SCUSA Pro Tour. As always, tune in when we go live. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you guys next week.
Oh my God, you see what Jen